The collapse of reality. This video is not here to inform you. It is here to disrupt the way you see everything. Once it lands, something in your perception will crack, and it will not reset. You think you are looking at reality right now. You trust what feels stable. But what if the line between real and fake is already gone? Not blurred, not hidden, gone. You wake up. You move through your morning without thinking. You reach for your phone before you fully wake up. You look around and everything feels familiar. But familiarity is not proof of reality. So stop for a second. Really stop. Look at something near you, your hand, your phone, the wall in front of you, and ask yourself one uncomfortable question. Are you seeing it directly? Or are you seeing what you have been trained to see? Because the uncomfortable truth is this: we are no longer living inside reality. We are living inside something that replaced it. And the replacement works so well that most people never notice the switch. That is where Jean Baudrillard steps in. Not as a distant academic voice, but as someone who saw this shift before most people even had screens in their pockets. In his book Simulacra and Simulation, he laid out a warning that sounds abstract until you start feeling it in your own life. He said we reached a point where copies no longer point to anything real. They only point to other copies. And slowly, without drama, reality does not disappear. It gets buried under layers. The attention trap. Look around you now. You are surrounded by updates. Every minute, every direction. Information is everywhere. Meaning is nowhere. And none of this reaches you untouched. What you call the world is often just a feed, a selection, a sequence arranged by invisible systems that already know what will hold your attention. So you are not only overwhelmed by information, you are not seeing reality. You are being fed reactions. You are not just reacting to what you see, you are being slowly shaped by it. Every scroll trains you, every click rewires you. Over time, you stop choosing what you notice. You start noticing what you were trained to choose. And that shift is subtle. It feels like preference, but it is conditioning. The real battle is no longer over land or resources. It is over attention. What holds your focus begins to define your reality. And the longer you stay inside one stream, the harder it becomes to see anything outside of it. Your world does not shrink. Your attention does. You do not notice it, but it changes everything. Repetition starts to feel like truth. You do not notice when it happens. It feels natural. It feels like you. But it is not entirely you. It is a pattern that has been repeated so many times that it now feels like your own voice. And that is the shift. You are not just living inside a system. The system has started speaking through you. Visibility starts to feel like importance. And what disappears from the feed begins to disappear from your sense of the world. You would expect clarity from that. You would expect to feel more certain. But that is not what people feel. People feel lost. People feel disconnected. People feel like something is missing, and they cannot explain what it is. This is the paradox he warned about. The more information we have, the less meaning we feel. Not because meaning disappeared, but because it got buried under endless simulation. And here is the deeper fracture. When everything starts to feel like a version of something else, you lose your sense of what is real. So the question is no longer what is real. The question is whether that question still has an answer. And to see how we got here, you need to step into a framework that will change how you read the world from this moment on. Simulacra and hyper-reality. What Baudrillard is trying to show is not abstract once you bring it down to your own life. It is actually painfully simple. He says we are no longer dealing with reality. We are dealing with what he calls simulacra. And simulacra are not just copies. They are copies of something that either no longer exists or never really existed in the first place. They look like reality. They feel like reality, but they do not point back to anything real anymore. Think about something as basic as a photo. There was a time when a photo captured a moment. It froze something that actually happened. It held a piece of life. Now think about how photos work today. You adjust the angle, you fix the lighting, you apply filters. Sometimes you generate the whole image with AI. Sometimes the moment itself exists only because you wanted something to post. The image is no longer a memory. It is a design. It is a version of reality that was built to be seen. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. The same thing happens with symbols. A painting of a king used to refer to a real person, a ruler, a body that existed in time. Now the idea of a king can be an emoji, a floating icon. It points to a concept, not a person. It is a sign that refers to other signs, not to reality. And when enough of these signs stack together, you enter something deeper. You enter what Baudrillard calls hyperreality. This is where things start to feel unsettling. Because in a hyper-real world, everything becomes content. A war and a viral dance sit side by side on your screen. Same space, same weight. They compete for your attention in the same way. They are flattened into the same format. They move at the same speed. They are consumed with the same gesture of your thumb. Meaning gets compressed. Emotion gets diluted. And here is the question that should bother you. If your memory of an event comes entirely from clips, over time you stop remembering life as it was lived. You stop remembering life as it was lived. You remember how it looked when it was framed. You remember the angle, the lighting, the version that could be shared. Your life starts organizing itself around how it might appear, not how it actually feels. If your memory comes from headlines and posts, do you still need the event itself, or is the representation enough? This is where things turn, because at this stage, it does not matter if something is real. It only matters if it feels real to you. That is the shift. And once that shift happens, the system does not need reality anymore. It only needs convincing simulations. The simulation of identity. To understand how we got here, you have to see simulation as a process. It does not happen all at once. It starts quietly. It starts with a model, a symbol, a sign that is meant to represent something real. At first, the connection is clear. You can still trace it back. But over time, that connection weakens. The symbol starts to drift. It begins to live its own life. And eventually, it no longer needs the original at all. It becomes self-referential. It becomes what Baudrillard calls simulacra, copies without an origin. A loop of meaning that feeds on itself. He breaks this down into 4 stages, and each stage is a step deeper into disconnection. The first stage is simple. It is a faithful copy, a reflection of something real, a photograph of a place, a recording of a voice. You still know what it points to. The second stage is where things begin to bend. The copy distorts the original. It exaggerates, it edits, it improves. The connection is still there, but it is no longer honest. The third stage is more dangerous. The copy hides the fact that the original is gone. It creates the illusion that something real still exists behind it, even when it does not. And then you reach the fourth stage. This is where the copy has no relationship to reality at all. It stands alone. It becomes its own truth. And at this point, the line between what is real and what is simulated disappears. Not because reality changed, but because your ability to tell the difference collapsed. There is a story that shows how human this actually is. It is about a tribe that was studied by outsiders. At first, the researchers came to observe. They wanted to document a culture. They wanted to record rituals. But something subtle happened. The moment the tribe became aware of being watched, their behavior started to shift. The rituals became more elaborate. The clothing became more traditional. The performance intensified, not because they were fake people, but because they were responding to a gaze. They began to present a version of themselves that matched what they believed was expected. Over time, those observations were published. They were turned into books, into academic descriptions, into official records of what that culture was supposed to be. And then something even stranger happened. The next generation of the tribe started using those records to learn their own traditions. And at that point, something breaks in a very quiet way. Because now they are not just living their culture, they are performing a version of it that was shaped by outside observation. They are becoming actors in their own identity. And if you sit with that long enough, it becomes uncomfortable. Because this is not just about them. This is about you. Think about how often you adjust yourself when you know you are being seen. Think about how often you present a cleaner version of who you are. And then think about how long you have been doing it. At some point, the performance stops feeling like a performance. It starts to feel like you. And the question becomes difficult. Who were you before you learned how to be seen? That question follows modern life everywhere. In school, at work, online, in relationships. You learn very early that being yourself is not enough. You must also know how to present yourself. So, you rehearse. You manage tone, you shape expression, you edit emotion, and after enough years of doing that, authenticity no longer feels natural. Performance does. At some point, you are no longer expressing yourself. You are maintaining yourself. You check how you come across, you adjust, you refine, you optimize, and that process never really stops. That is why it feels heavy sometimes. Not because you are lost, because you are constantly managing a version of yourself. That may be one of the saddest victories of simulation. It makes the mask feel more familiar than the face. You can see the same pattern in places that feel completely normal. Take a hypermarket like Walmart. It looks like a simple store. It feels convenient. Everything is clean. Everything is organized. Everything looks perfect. The vegetables are smooth. The colors are consistent. Nothing feels messy. But if you compare that to a real farm, something feels off. Real produce is irregular. It has flaws. It varies in size and shape. What you see in the store is not nature. It is a reconstructed version of nature. It is what nature is supposed to look like after it has been filtered through expectation. And where did that expectation come from? It came from images, from advertising, from media, from previous simulations. So now the simulation is shaping the standard, and the real world is adjusting to match it. The copy now decides what the original should be. The same logic applies to something like Disneyland. On the surface, it is a place of fantasy. It is exaggerated. It is clearly artificial. But that is exactly why it feels honest. Because it does not pretend to be real. It shows you that it is a constructed world. And in doing that, it exposes something about the outside world. The outside world also runs on scripts. It also runs on performance. It is also staged in ways you do not notice. Disneyland becomes a mirror. It reveals that reality itself has become theatrical. Think about something as simple as the idea of a princess. If someone asks you to imagine one, an image appears instantly. You did not invent that image. You inherited it. It was given to you through stories, movies, media. That image feels real to you, but it is a simulation. And it entered your mind before you had the ability to question it. Now bring this back to something even closer. Your own life, your own profile, your own image. Social media is supposed to reflect who you are. That is the promise. But in practice, it becomes something else. You choose what to show. You remove what does not fit. You smooth out contradictions. You present a version that is easier to understand, easier to like, easier to consume. And over time, that version becomes more visible than you. It becomes more consistent than you. It becomes more real to others than your actual experience. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to align yourself with that version. You adjust your behavior to match your own projection. You stop being yourself. You start performing yourself. You fragment across contexts, each version slightly edited, one for work, one for friends, one for strangers. Over time, these versions stop aligning, and you feel a quiet tension, not dramatic, but constant, like something is off, but you cannot locate it. This is not your fault, but it is happening to you. It is the environment shaping you. Baudrillard extends this beyond the individual. He looks at the entire consumer society. He argues that we are not just consuming products, we are consuming signs. We are consuming meanings that have been attached to those products. A brand is no longer just an object. It is an identity. It is a signal. It is a story. The slogan matters more than the substance. The image matters more than the function. And this logic spreads everywhere. In politics, the image of a candidate becomes more important than their ideas. Their presence matters more than their policies. Their narrative matters more than their truth. And if you ask why this works, the answer is uncomfortable. Because we prefer it. We prefer simulations. They are easier to process. They are easier to enjoy. They are designed to fit our attention. They are optimized to trigger response. Look at the world around you with this in mind. You start to notice a pattern. You eat copies. You wear copies. You admire copies. You follow copies. You decorate your life with copies. Then slowly, without noticing, you become easier to copy too. Fake fabrics that imitate natural textures. Fake celebrities built on persona. Fake personalities crafted for engagement. Fake plants that never die. Fake grass that never grows. Everything is a version of something else. Everything is a controlled imitation. And the problem is not just that these things exist. The problem is where your attention goes and what you start depending on, because your brain adapts. Fast. Too fast. It starts rejecting what is real, the immediate version, the optimized version, and slowly, real experiences begin to feel dull, too slow, too unpredictable, too imperfect. So, you return to the simulation, again and again. Not because you are weak, but because it was built to pull you back. It was built to reward you quickly. It was built to keep you engaged. And over time, this creates a quiet dependency. You start to rely on simulations to feel something, to escape something, to define something. And the cost is subtle but deep. You lose tolerance for depth. Reality starts to feel too slow. You lose contact with parts of yourself that do not perform well on a screen. And if you are honest for a moment, you can feel this in your own life. The way you check your phone without thinking. The way you compare your life to images that were never real. The way you present yourself in ways that feel slightly disconnected from how you actually feel. This is not just a theory anymore. This is a lived condition. And the strangest part is this. You can feel something is off, but you cannot explain it. It is not dramatic. It is quiet. A low-level disconnect that never fully leaves. And over time, you learn to live with it. One of the quietest losses in all of this is your inner voice, not your thoughts. You have many of those. I mean the deeper signal, the sense of what is true before it is approved, posted, repeated, or rewarded. When you live too long inside noise, you stop trusting that signal. You wait for reflection before you believe your own experience. And the hardest part is this: when you are inside a system of simulation, it becomes almost impossible to imagine anything outside of it. Returning to the real. So the question stays with you now. Can we actually return to what is real? I ask it the same way you do, without pretending I already know the answer. Because, if you look honestly, we may have gone too far to simply rewind. We built a world that runs on layers of imitation, and those layers are now part of how we think, how we feel, how we see ourselves. Even if you tried to strip it all away, you might not find some pure original waiting underneath. That can feel heavy. It can feel like something has been lost for good. But there is another side that is quieter and more human. There are still small pockets of reality that have not been flattened. They are easy to miss because they do not demand attention. They do not perform. They just exist. A genuine smile from a stranger that asks for nothing. A conversation that does not turn into content. A piece of art made because someone could not help but make it, not because it needed to sell. These moments are not loud, but they are real, and your body knows the difference when you feel them. Start small. Put your phone down for a moment. Notice one thing without capturing it. Let a moment exist without turning it into content. Sit in silence without filling it. Pay attention to how something feels instead of how it looks. This is how you begin to reconnect, not by escaping the system, but by stepping out of it, one moment at a time. So maybe the point is not to escape the system completely. That may not even be possible anymore. Maybe the point is to move through it with awareness, to notice when something is pulling you away from yourself. Because anything that distances you from who you actually are belongs to the simulation, the clothes you hide behind, the identity you perform, the ads that tell you what to want, the polished spaces that signal status, the lights, the branding, the labels. All of it is a layer. And the danger is not that it exists. The danger is forgetting that it is a layer. When you remember, something shifts. You do not have to reject everything. You just stop confusing it with truth. And then the idea of nature starts to change. It is no longer a place you have to go find. It is not a weekend escape. You are not separate from it. You are part of it, even when you are surrounded by concrete and screens. The system works by making you forget that, by making you feel like you need to reconnect to something that was never actually gone, so the work becomes simple, but not easy. Simulation trains you to move fast. It teaches you that if something does not respond instantly, it is not worth your attention. But real life does not work like that. Real things take time to form. Trust takes time. Depth takes time. Meaning takes time. You are not losing time. You are returning to the only place where anything real can actually exist. So when you slow down, you are not falling behind. You are returning to the pace where reality can actually be felt. Bring depth back into your life. Let things take time again. Sit with moments that do not give you instant reward. Question the things you feel certain about, especially your own beliefs. Because certainty inside a system like this is often just repetition that went unchallenged. The more confident something sounds, the more carefully you should look at it, including your own voice. And maybe that is where a different kind of freedom begins. Not in breaking out completely, but in seeing clearly while you are still inside, in choosing what you engage with, in choosing what you ignore, in choosing to stay present in moments that do not translate well into images, because those are the moments that belong to you. So no, you may not be able to return to some untouched version of reality, but you can still reclaim pieces of your own experience. You can still feel your life directly, without needing it to be validated or displayed. And in a world that is constantly asking you to perform, that might be the most radical act left. If this made you see something you cannot unsee, stay with us. Subscribe and be part of a space that questions what feels normal. Share this with someone who feels the same quiet disconnect but cannot name it. And come back to this video when the noise gets too loud, so you do not forget what you just realized. Slow down, pay attention, and for once, stop performing your life.